Clara was laughing in the photo. That's what made it unbearable. Not the fact that she was sitting beside Patrick with her hand casually draped over his thigh. Not the wine glass tilted between her fingers or the dim rooftop lighting. Not even the fact that she was wearing the same white blouse I bought her last month from Milan. It was the laugh. That open-mouthed, carefree laugh. The kind I hadn't seen in months. It hit my inbox at 2:17 a.m. The subject line was blank, the sender anonymous. But the message was clear. You're the only one who doesn't know. I stared at the image, while the glow of my laptop flickered across my hotel room. The Tokyo skyline outside the window blurred as my vision went glassy. I blinked once, twice. No matter how long I stared, the scene didn't change. My wife and my best friend, comfortable, familiar, like I was the outsider in their story. The next morning, I stood at the hotel concierge desk and chartered a jet. They said it would be 5 hours before takeoff. I told them to make it 2. I had divorce papers in my inbox from a previous negotiation, an old draft meant to protect our assets. I opened the file and started revising it. This time I wasn't negotiating. I was ending. At 36,000 feet, surrounded by silence and leather seats, I read over the final line. This agreement constitutes the formal and permanent dissolution of the marriage between Samuel Cross and Clara Cross, effective immediately upon mutual signature. There would be no mutual anything. There would be ink, my ink, a stamp, her tears. I closed my laptop and stared out the window. The clouds didn't look like redemption. They looked like consequence. I hadn't been the perfect husband. I traveled. Too much. Missed dinners. Forgot anniversaries. But I had never betrayed her. And now, every mile I closed toward New York wasn't just distance reclaimed. It was time rewound. I wasn't returning as the man she left behind. I was returning as the man who would leave her behind, and I was bringing the papers to prove it. I met Clara at a charity gala 6 years ago. She was standing near a table of champagne flutes, dressed in red and looking like she had wandered out of a painting and into the room by accident. Her lipstick matched her dress. Her smile didn't. It was hesitant, controlled. The kind of smile people wear when they're calculating how much of themselves to reveal. I was standing across the room with Patrick. We were 2 years into launching our logistics startup, still broke, still in rented suits. I had no business walking over to her, but I did. I asked her if she liked these kinds of events. She said, "Only when I can leave early." I said, "Then let's leave." 2 weeks later, we were dating. 6 months after that, engaged. I proposed with a ring I couldn't afford, in a restaurant I'd borrowed credit to reserve. She cried when I asked, said she'd never been someone's first choice before. That was Clara. On the surface, polished, graceful, composed, but underneath, she needed to be chosen, and I was stupid enough to believe I could fill that need forever. I wasn't rich when we got married, but I was ambitious. I promised her a life that would stretch beyond apartments and coupons. And for a while, I delivered. Our company landed a major international contract, and suddenly we were in boardrooms instead of coffee shops. We had matching passports full of stamps, a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows, and we had distance. Clara never liked the travel. She said she supported it, but every time I left, something changed. Calls got shorter. Silences grew longer. I missed our 3rd anniversary because of a cargo port delay in Rotterdam. She told me it was fine, that she understood. She didn't. Patrick tried to patch things for us. You should surprise her more, send flowers, plan getaways. But he was around more than I was. He helped her with things I should have done, fixing the leaky pipe under the sink, picking her up when her car broke down. I didn't think twice about it back then, because Patrick had been my best friend since college. He helped me build the company from a dorm room idea into something real. He was at our wedding. He gave a toast that made Clara cry. I thought we were family. Looking back now, maybe I gave him too many keys to my house, to my trust, to my absence. And Clara? She was always good at giving people just enough of herself to make them feel needed. Maybe she stopped needing me. Maybe she never did. But here's what people don't tell you about betrayal. It's not the lie that stings. It's the ease with which they tell it. The way they look you in the eye and speak softly so you won't hear the dagger slide in. Before I left for Tokyo, she kissed me at the airport, brief, distracted, like I was a colleague boarding a business flight. "Call me when you land," she said. I called. She didn't answer. For 3 days, I told myself she was busy. I knew better. The photo that landed in my inbox wasn't a mistake. It wasn't someone trying to hurt me. It was someone trying to show me what I was refusing to see. And maybe, in some twisted way, it was a gift. Because when I boarded that jet back to New York, I wasn't returning to save our marriage. I wasn't hoping for a conversation or an apology. I was returning with a document in my hand and a resolve in my chest. My name is Samuel Cross. I built a company from nothing. I turned every rejection into revenue. I made my wife's dreams real with my blood and time, and she spent those dreams on someone else while I wasn't looking. That's okay. Now I'm looking, and she's the one who won't see what's coming. The elevator ride to our penthouse felt slower than usual. Maybe it was the weight in my chest. Maybe it was the folder in my hand. Divorce papers printed on thick cream-colored stock. Ironic how something meant to shatter lives came wrapped in elegance. The door opened, and for a second I hesitated. Not because I was unsure, because I knew everything in my life before that moment was about to collapse into a single conversation. I pushed the door open. Clara was barefoot in the kitchen, her back to me. She was making coffee, humming softly, one of those old jazz tunes she always played when she cleaned. I noticed she was wearing a t-shirt that wasn't mine. It was too big, sleeves loose, the collar stretched. A man's shirt, just not her, husband's. She turned. Her eyes widened when she saw me standing there. "You're back early." "Yeah," I said, setting the papers on the counter. "Things changed." She walked around the kitchen island slowly, like she wasn't sure. If I was real. Did something happen in Tokyo? "Not there," I said. "Here." She blinked. "What do you mean?" I didn't answer. I just slid the papers toward her. She didn't touch them. "You're divorcing me?" "You already divorced me. Emotionally, physically, you just didn't sign anything." Her jaw clenched. "Sam, don't turn this into something it's not." "Then tell me what it is," I said calmly. "Tell me what it means when my best friend leaves our building at 9 a.m. wearing a shirt I bought you for Valentine's Day and you're in the apartment 15 minutes later wrapped in a towel." She didn't speak. I waited. Silence. Again. "It was a mistake," she finally whispered. "How many times?" I asked. She flinched. "Does it matter?" "Only if I'm stupid enough to care." I picked up the papers again and dropped them into her hands. "I already filed. You just need to sign." "I'm not signing anything. You will." "No, Sam. I won't let you just walk away from this like I'm some footnote. You're not blameless here. You were never here. You were always flying somewhere, chasing contracts, clients, God knows what. I begged you to slow down." "You begged me to succeed," I snapped. "You begged for the vacations, the penthouse, the lifestyle. You smiled in every photo while I broke myself to give you that smile. And now you're mad I gave too much?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I felt like I was married to your ambition." "You were, and you slept with its shadow." The room pulsed, with silence. Then, from the hallway, another voice. "Is this a bad time?" Patrick. He leaned against the wall as if this was casual, as if he hadn't stepped into my home, my life, and peeled my trust apart piece by piece. I turned slowly. "You've got 5 seconds to leave before I put you through the door." Clara stepped between us. "Sam, don't—" 4 seconds. Patrick raised his hands. "All right, I'm going." He didn't, not immediately. He looked at Clara, then back at me. I never planned for it to happen like this. But it happened, I said. And that's all that matters. He nodded and left. The door closed behind him, but his presence still soaked the walls. I turned to Clara. You could have told me you were lonely. I would have made time. I did. No, I said. You hinted. You sulked. You dropped guilt like confetti. But you never had the courage to say, I'm hurting. You chose betrayal over bravery. She wiped her eyes. I still love you. I laughed. Then you have a strange way of showing it. She gripped the divorce papers tighter. So this is it? This is what you chose. She looked down, then back at me. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It always goes this far, I said, grabbing my coat. People don't fall into affairs. They walk into them, fully aware. Door open, eyes wide. And just like that, I left the apartment. My apartment, my home, but not my marriage, not anymore. The hotel room was clean, quiet, and lifeless. I had checked in an hour after walking out of the apartment, but I hadn't taken off my shoes. The divorce papers were folded beside the lamp, unsigned. I wasn't sure why I brought them. I already knew she wasn't going to be the one to end it. I had to. The city outside buzzed like a distant lie, too loud to ignore, too far to touch. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the carpet. Beige, patternless, a blank slate, just like I needed to be, just like I didn't know how to become. Hadn't cried. Not because I wasn't broken, because I was too angry to bleed. Every time I thought of Clara's voice, soft, guilty, almost convincing, I felt a burn crawl up the back of my throat. How many times had I made excuses for her moods? For the sighs when I came home late? For the look she gave when I opened my laptop after dinner? She said she felt alone, but she wasn't the only one. I had eaten hotel meals more than homemade, ones for 2 years. I had missed birthdays, our second anniversary. I once flew 12 hours straight just to attend her friend's wedding with her for 40 minutes. She cried that night, told me she'd never forget that I came. Now I wondered if she meant it, or if Patrick was already waiting in the wings. What haunted me most wasn't the betrayal. It was how fast she pivoted. There had been no confession, no remorse, just an exposed truth and an immediate defense, like she'd rehearsed it. She felt like she was married to your ambition. That line kept spinning in my head. Maybe she was right, but ambition doesn't unzip a blouse. It doesn't answer hotel room keys. It doesn't kiss someone else behind your back and tell them your husband won't notice. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. But every time I did, I saw her. Laugh that rooftop photo. The way her eyes sparkled, not at me, not with me. It was as if the last 5 years meant less than 5 seconds of adrenaline with someone who hadn't earned it. I knew I wasn't perfect, but I had never been a liar, and I had never been a coward. What burned wasn't that I lost her. It was that she never gave me the truth, only just enough of it to hurt. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You deserved better. I'm sorry. Faith. I stared at her name for a long time. Someone saw me, someone who wasn't Clara. I locked the screen, and for the first time since landing, I felt something break loose inside me. Not pain, not rage, relief. Because maybe I wasn't mourning her. Maybe I was mourning who I was with her, and maybe that part of me deserved to die. 3 days passed. I hadn't called Clara. She hadn't called me either. Was halfway through transferring my name off the business accounts we shared when I got a call from my lawyer. She's contesting the terms, he said flatly. Clara filed an emergency motion this morning claiming joint ownership of your company's intellectual property. She wants half. I didn't answer. She submitted a time-stamped proposal, apparently signed by you last year. Did you ever draft something informal with her before the company was fully incorporated? I stood in the middle of the sidewalk, cars rushing past me, pedestrians brushing by like I was invisible. I remembered. There had been a rough document, early days back when I still thought marriage meant shared everything. I'd written it. after she complained about being left out of the company's success. I never filed it, never had it notarized. But I gave her a copy. She called it a token of trust. Now it was leverage. "I'll take care of it," I muttered. The line went dead, and the second betrayal landed harder than the first, not because it was unexpected, but because this one came with strategy. Clara hadn't just lied, she had planned. All this time, while I had been chartering jets and writing apology emails to clients for missing meetings, she had been archiving receipts, positioning herself, storing ammunition. She wasn't just cheating, she was preparing for war. I called. "Patrick?" he answered. Sounded surprised. "You and Clara, did you plan this together?" He paused. "What are you talking about?" "She's trying to take half the company. She filed using an early agreement I gave her before incorporation." "I didn't know about that." I waited. "You didn't know?" I asked again, slower. "Or you didn't stop her?" "I didn't tell her to do it, Sam." "But you knew she could. And you said nothing." He sighed. "She was scared, man. She thought you were gonna toss her out like trash." "She is trash." Silence. I ended the call. A minute later, Faith texted me. "She filed, didn't she?" I replied, "Yeah, and she wants to bleed me out." She wrote back instantly, "Then you better start fighting like someone who has something left to protect." That night I went to my office. I sat at my desk, opened my safe, and pulled out a USB I hadn't looked at in months, backups of our original shareholder agreements, lawyer emails, timestamps. I called my legal team. "I want every communication we ever had about Clara's exclusion from the founding documents." They didn't ask why, they just said, "Understood." Because this wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a chess match, and I had finally stopped playing nice. The courtroom was cold, not just from the air conditioning, but from the silence, the kind that wraps around everyone like a noose right before the drop. Clara sat 3 rows ahead, flanked by her lawyer and Patrick. I hadn't seen him in 2 weeks, but there he was, dressed in a suit I'd once lent him for a pitch meeting. Same smug expression, same casual arrogance that said he thought this was still a game. But it wasn't. Not anymore. The judge called us forward. The clerk read through the basics. Contested divorce, disputed business interest, request for partial division of assets. Clara looked calm, maybe even rehearsed. She had on the light gray blazer I'd bought her in Barcelona. Her hair was tied back neatly, and her face held that same expression I used to see at galas, a mixture of elegance and calculation. "Your Honor," her lawyer began, "our client requests enforcement of an early agreement drafted and shared by Mr. Cross, in which he clearly acknowledged a 50% stake of the company's value in Clara Cross's name. We submit this document into evidence." He handed it over. I didn't flinch. The judge barely looked at it before turning to me. "Mr. Cross?" I stood. "The document is real, but it's meaningless." He raised an eyebrow. "Explain." That file was a symbolic gesture drafted before the company existed. There was no business entity registered, no revenue, no intellectual property. It was a personal note, sent as an email attachment. It holds no legal bearing, and most importantly, I rescinded it in writing. My lawyer handed over a packet. "In this is a termination letter dated 2 weeks after the original draft," I said. Clara never responded. She never contested, because at the time, she didn't care. Clara's face twisted. The judge skimmed the pages. "And you have timestamps to prove this?" "Yes, with backups, on and off site." Patrick shifted in his seat. "And furthermore," I added, "I'd like to submit a second file." My lawyer passed over a USB. This contains surveillance footage from a security camera placed outside our shared apartment, footage that captures Patrick, entering and leaving multiple times during the months I was abroad, along with interior footage, recorded with Clara's written consent, back when she accused the cleaning staff of stealing jewelry, that shows both her and Mr. Brooks in compromising circumstances. The judge raised both brows now. Clara turned, to look at me fully for the first time since we entered the room. Her face was pale, Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she didn't respond. I kept going. And in the interest of transparency, I'm not pressing charges for trespassing or personal misconduct. I'm not requesting punitive damages. I'm only here to ensure that I walk away with what I built. Nothing more, nothing less. The judge looked from her to me. Then he nodded once and said the only thing that mattered: we'll recess too. Review the files. A formal ruling will follow, but I don't believe the court needs further testimony to determine credibility. Clara stood as he did, but she didn't move. Her hands trembled. She reached for my arm. Sam, I stepped back. I don't want to hear it. Please, you don't know what it was like. You were always gone. I was lonely. I was scared. I didn't want to lose everything. You lost everything the second you made a choice. I can forgive mistakes. I can't forgive calculation. You plan to betray me and profit from it. Her eyes filled with tears. I still love you. I laughed under my breath. You don't know what love is, Clara. Love doesn't take from someone who gave you everything. Patrick tried to speak next. Sam, Don't, I cut him off. You're nothing. You used to be my brother. Now you're just a cautionary tale. You betrayed a man who would have died for you. So live with that. We walked out of the courthouse in opposite directions. I didn't look back. That night, I stood alone in the office. The same place I used to bring Clara coffee while I pulled all-nighters. The same couch Patrick used to crash on when we were broke and building. I looked around and realized none of it felt like it belonged to them anymore. The company was mine again. Not just on paper, but in spirit, in clarity. The betrayal was still raw, but the anger was gone. All that was left was truth. Later that week, Faith invited me to dinner. Not as a date, just something casual, she said. But I noticed she wore something new, a deep navy dress, hair softly curled, lipstick a few shades bolder than usual. I didn't comment, but I saw her, the way she leaned forward when I spoke, the way she didn't flinch when I mentioned the court, the way she said, "You handled that better than most people ever could." "I don't feel proud," I said. "You should," she replied. "You stayed quiet until it mattered. You didn't stoop. You didn't retaliate. You just ended it with truth. I don't know what comes next." "Whatever you want," she said. I stared at the candle between us, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel hollow. I felt ready, because the worst had already happened, and I survived it. A month passed. The final ruling came in writing. Clara was denied any ownership in the company. The judge cited the rescinded draft, her failure to contest it, and the overwhelming evidence of her misconduct. The court declared our prenuptial agreement intact and binding. The divorce was finalized the same week. She didn't attend the last hearing. Patrick did. He sat at the back, expression hollow. I didn't speak to him, didn't acknowledge him, but as I walked past, I stopped just long enough to say without turning, "That suit you're wearing, I bought it. Might want to sell it. You'll need the money." I left him in silence. Clara moved out of the penthouse the following day. She left behind a small envelope on the dining table. No words, just her wedding ring. It lay face up in the center, almost pleading. I didn't touch it. I had already removed mine 3 weeks ago. I boxed the ring up and shipped it to the address she gave the court. No note, no return label. It wasn't revenge. It was detachment. And that was always the greater punishment. You can scream at someone all you want, but nothing hurts more than watching them walk away without saying a thing. I heard through mutual channels that Clara tried to file for unemployment, that Patrick had taken out loans to salvage what was left of his own startup, which never lifted off once investors found out who he really was. One of my board members leaked a note about ethics red flags during the due diligence phase. I didn't tell him to. I didn't have to. People talk. Reputation spreads like blood and water. I spent the next 2 months rebuilding, not the business, but myself. I changed my routine, started working out again, spent more time at home. More dinners with clients. More nights where I didn't look at my phone, wondering if it was a lie calling me from the other side. And slowly, I stopped seeing Clara's ghost in every corner of my apartment. She faded, like smoke. Faith became more present during that time, not in loud ways, just in steady ones. She would text to check in, drop off a coffee if she was nearby, send photos of a hiking trail and say, "Looks like you." One night, we were walking along the East River. The air was cold and we both had our hands buried in our coat pockets. She asked, "Do you still think about her?" "Sometimes," I said honestly, "but less like something I miss, more like a scar I forget until it itches." She nodded. "Scars make you human, not broken." I looked at her. "You talk like someone who's been through this too." She smiled. "You're not the only one who loved someone who didn't know how to stay loyal." I reached over and gently touched her wrist. "And how long did it take you to start trusting again?" She looked at me, then said, "I'll let you know when I do." Spring arrived, I sold the penthouse. It was too quiet, too big, and too full of old shadows. I bought a place outside the city near the woods, smaller, grounded, with a kitchen that begged to be used and a porch that made morning coffee taste like peace. Faith helped me move in. Not because I asked. She just showed up with boxes, snacks, and a playlist. I let her unpack the glassware. She organized it by height. That night, we sat on the floor with pizza boxes and 2 wine glasses. I didn't say much. Neither did she. At one point, she said, "Do you realize you never once asked me out?" I looked over. I thought I was waiting for the right time. And? "I think the time's been right for a while," she laughed quietly. "Good, because I was starting to think I'd have to do it." We didn't become a whirlwind. We became something better. Steady. No grand declarations, no staged photos, just consistent presence. The kind of love you build on purpose, not by accident. 6 months after the divorce, I got a message from Clara, a voice note. I played it once. She sounded tired. "Sam, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. Not because of what happened with Patrick, not because I lost everything, but because I didn't realize what I had until I buried it. You never lied to me. And that's rare. I hope you're doing well. I really do." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Faith and I stood on the new deck one evening, the sky bleeding soft oranges into the tree line. She was leaning against the railing, sipping wine. I had my arm around her waist. She looked at me and asked, "If you could go back, would you change anything?" I thought about it, about the lies, the betrayal, the cold hotel rooms, the nights I woke up convinced something was wrong before I had proof. Then I looked at her, at the peace in her face. "No," I said. "Not 1 second," she smiled. "Good, because you couldn't become this version of you without that version of her." Exactly. We clinked glasses. That night, I walked into my office and opened the bottom drawer of my desk. The file was still there, the old divorce draft, marked up, rewritten, fought over. I picked it up, looked at it for a second, then slowly fed it into the shredder. The past was over, and I wasn't just done surviving. I was finally living. Bold ending she. Thought betrayal would break me. Instead, it remade me, stronger, smarter, and surrounded by people who never had to lie to love me.